Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with John Campos, founder and owner of Terrible Games LLC, a scrappy and visionary publishing house. John's newest title, Black Mold, a co-op till it's not, is currently on Kickstarter. John, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. Great to have you. This is a pretty cool concept. I was doing some research on it earlier, and we're going to get into it in a moment. I don't want to jump the gun yet. But first and foremost, how long have you been in this industry for?
Officially, we entered the industry in 2020 when we ran our first campaign for a game called Token Terror's Battlegrounds.
Okay.
And since then, we delivered the act. Was that in 2020? Yeah. And we delivered that in the summer last year. And then we did a smaller project called Repugnant, the world's most disgusting TTRPG. And now we're here with our third release, Black Mold.
Oh, wow. That's a lot in like 2 years. Wow. You guys been busy.
Yeah. If anybody who maybe has gone through the process of taking a game from concept to, final version and crowdfunded on Kickstarter, there was a lot of lead up time before our first Kickstarter. Yeah. We spent about 5-ish years just kind of understanding the industry, digging into what it's going to take for us to fund a project successfully. And during that entire time, we were really just like getting our hands dirty in the design side of figuring out how Token Terrors was going to operate and work mechanically. So we've been at this board game thing for about 8 years, but officially in the industry as a maker of products since 2020.
I gotcha. And have you been board gaming your whole life, or is it something you've got into more recently, or how's your kind of gaming journey progressed?
When Catan first came out, I was part of that big wave of people who were kind of understanding that board games can be a little bit more than Monopoly and Connect Four. That was a while ago now. After I got out of high school, I started getting into Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, and that's sort of where my hobbyist side sort of lived as far as tabletop went. After we started researching getting into Kickstarter and really entering the hobby in earnest, I started backing Kickstarters myself to sort of understand the end-to-end process. And now I have, I got a shelf of shame, I got a collection and all that good stuff.
For those who don't know, the shelf of shame is games that you've got, but you haven't played.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think we've all got a couple of them. One thing I find is, I got a couple like this where I backed the game because I thought it was going to be simpler than it actually was. My wheelhouse is games that you can teach in like, 5-10 minutes max. Game's going to play about 45 minutes to an hour, and a pretty straightforward way to pick it up. And this is the kind of game I take to my game night, right? So I've got a game night I go to every week, and everybody brings their different titles. And on my shelf of shame, I've got a few titles where I had backed them and I had assumed that they were easier than they were. And then when I got into kind of the rules and the instructions, it's like, whoa, this is not only going to take me longer than an hour to play, so not really great for game night, but I'm having trouble getting my head around exactly how to play this game. So they're on my list. I'll get to them eventually, but we all have those shelves of shame. So, and did I read somewhere that you're a musician as well, or?
Yeah. I'm a performing musician. I have a number of bands that I've been in over the years, but I've been doing it for a little under 20 years now. I also am a co-founder and contributing member of the Baltimore Rock Opera Society, which writes and produces and performs all original rock operas here in Baltimore City. So right now I have a band called Cowabunga Pizza Time. I play guitar and sing in that, and we do sort of very like positive party punk metal kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm also in a doom metal band called Haze Mage, where I play the drums. And I got another side project actually cooking in the background called Blight Beast right now. That's a prog metal deathcore band that I also play guitar in. So, I stay busy, but it's kind of, playing music has actually kind of become my like quote unquote hobby, since board gaming is like my job kind of.
How many instruments do you play then?
I just play guitar and drums. But it keeps me busy. I like to stay active in the scene here and get out to shows and have fun.
And lead vocals or backup vocals?
Backup vocals. I can hang on lead vocals if I used to front a band for a little while, but I kind of like being in the shed and doing a lot of the writing and like really collaborating, getting into the room with my good friends and writing stuff that we have fun playing that we enjoy doing.
Yeah, a lot of late nights, I guess.
Nah, I got a 7-year-old at home, so I have a hard out at 10 o'clock. We usually practice during the week.
So in between, so now your games is more your full time gig,
Yeah.
and that's more your hobby. Now, is this something you're doing yourself, or do you have a couple people you're collaborating with for Terrible Games, or how's the company kind of structured?
Yeah, so I have 4 partners. There's Phil Docolo, who is a co-designer. He helps me out with a lot of design choices. He actually came up with a lot of the core mechanisms for Black Mold as well as Token Terrors.
Yeah.
My best friend Lucas Geraci is one of our developers, and he's also helped me cook up a couple games that we have sort of on the back burner that we're planning on releasing some years down the line. There's Shannon Light Hadley, who does a lot of our graphic design layout work. And then my other partner, Tim Brocious, who does all of our media stuff. So he can 3D animate. He knows how to sculpt in ZBrush. He does film editing. He does visual effects. So we have a nice little crew. I'm really like the day-to-day kind of boots on the ground person.
Mhm.
There's ways that we can sort of congeal a little bit more as a company, but we're still sort of like getting our toes wet, as it were.
And you're an artist as well. I think I read somewhere too.
Yeah, I do all the illustration for our
Oh, wow.
releases so far,
Okay.
and that's really like my full-time gig. But at the moment, because we're in the middle of a campaign, I've kind of put my illustration stuff to the side for the moment, so I can kind of focus on getting Black Mold funded and staying
Okay.
focused on this release.
So were you doing like freelance? So with the company, or were you like a freelancer, or?
Yep, yeah, I do freelance.
Okay.
And I've also had a ton of fun working on some other board game titles as well. So if you're familiar with Wes Woodbury and Fundamental Games based
I
out
am.
of Canada, I did all of the illustration for their release Questeros.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
I backed
yeah,
that game actually. I should have it coming
cool.
soon. Yeah. Actually, I think I actually already have it. It's on my shelf.
Yeah, that should have arrived a while
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah. Well, I gave it to my
Yeah.
niece. She's into tarot. So when I was talking to Wes, I'm like, I gotta get this for my niece because she loves tarot. So I did get it. I did a box opening and then I gifted it to her right away. So and she absolutely
Awesome.
loves it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I got to work on a game called Micro Medusa around this time last year with a publisher named Floyd Liu.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually that side of it, even if for whatever reason I decide to hang it up as a publisher and maybe decide, how like, hey, it's just a little too much at this point, or for whatever reason, I'm actually kind of looking forward to pivoting my skill set and my experience in the board game world to just kind of devoting myself to doing the art side of
Yeah.
making board games. I actually do get really excited. Part of the reason Black Mold exists is because like we had this idea for a concept, and I just got like so enamored with the premise of the game and the world that I like sat down and pumped out the art package in like 10 days.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, from an indie publishing standpoint, especially talking to a lot of other creators out there, being able to work up your art package without spending any cash is a huge advantage for us. So I'm always thankful for that side of things.
Yeah, it can get quite costly. We're going through this on one of our games right now, and all I can say is you got to try to cut corners where you can and find savings where you can, but it's not easy. Sometimes you got to get kind of creative, right? What came first? Was the mechanics of this game Black Mold, or was it the theme?
The title and the main mechanism of holding your breath.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, those two happened. Those two things happened at the same time.
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary about board games called Game Masters on Netflix. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's very good.
No, I'm gonna start watching it.
Yeah, check it. Yeah, it's a 1-part documentary. It's a film documentary. But somebody was talking about trying to create something that feels original, something that feels novel. A designer was talking about doing that, and immediately I got hit this idea, like holding your breath, a game where you have to hold your breath. It's called Black Mold, and the idea of Black Mold, like this growing mycelium fungal invader that can harm you if you breathe it in, all kind of made sense. COVID was kind of going full blast when this idea came to me.
Yeah.
I had just got done playing Last of Us 2, which has like mushroom monsters in it. So this idea of like a cramped corridor with like eldritch horror style mushroom creatures kind of just like popped in my head. And I called Phil, and like I said, he ran with that core idea of holding your breath to determine the length of your turn and came up with these mechanisms that when we got it to the table, we just thought were like weirdly compelling and cool, and kind of transported you into this unfamiliar and kind of like unsettling mindset.
Yeah, it is super cool. I was when I first saw the game, I didn't pick up on that right away because it says, as long as you can hold your breath, and I thought you meant like metaphorically. I didn't know you guys actually meant literally.
Yeah.
And when I kind of dove deeper into kind of my research on the game, and I saw that no, you're actually holding your breath for the duration of your turn. I thought, wow, what a cool mechanic. I hadn't seen that anywhere before. Was this something like, have you seen this in another game, or is this something you guys just came up with? Like, it's the first I've come across it.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, the reason that it struck me and I got excited about it is because I
Yeah.
was like, this doesn't exist. Like, this is a new thing. I did actually, talking to some other developers and people in the hobby, find out that there is a game. So there's this one game, apparently it kind of works the same way, but you have to talk, like you have to make sound the entire time. And I don't think it's
Mm,
actually a board game. I think it's like a schoolyard style game
okay.
where you have to repeat this phrase over and over and over and over and over and over
Yeah.
and over. And the moment you stop, like, you're penalized somehow. I think it's called Howler or Howling or something like
No,
that.
okay.
And then there's another game that I don't know the name of, where it's a co-op game that involves like deep sea diving, where everyone at the table holds their breath at the same time, and you make forward progress like down into the water until the last person can't hold their breath any farther. Um, which pretty cool. But yeah, I hadn't heard of that when we came with the concept, and I mean,
Yeah, that's first I heard of it. Yeah.
I yeah, I think for the way that our mechanism is like feeding atmosphere and feeding the mentality of being like slightly panicked,
Yeah.
slightly, confused, sort of making like not the smartest, like gut last minute decisions, like really quick choices, really does like feed into the experience that we're trying to provide with the game.
Yeah. And I remember and the first thing that obviously popped into my head was, okay, well, what if I'm playing with someone that's got like better lung capacity than I do, right? And
Yeah.
and then, but you guys have addressed that as well. So you've got a timer, right? So if someone
Yep.
doesn't want to hold their breath, they're afraid they're going to pass out at their table. You guys have like a 1 minute timer. You can like sand timer. You guys can pass around and use that to kind of represent holding your breath, so to speak,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, we had this idea initially to maybe like print us like some lungs on the side of the sand timer to sort of like drive the whole theme home a little bit more. But for the time being, we've had one reviewer that was just like, hey, if you're not comfortable holding your breath, they got the same time. But let me tell you, holding your breath is way more fun. It's a
Oh, for
lot more,
sure.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, we provide the sand timer, and it is actually great. It's great for learning too. If you're just sitting down to the game for the first time, you want to ask questions during your turn, the sand timer is awesome. And we also have an expansion character called the Ghosts, but I won't spoil too much here because it's going to be revealed a little bit later. But that particular character doesn't hold their breath at all because ghosts aren't alive. They don't have
Mm.
to breathe. So the sand timer determines the length of the return the whole time. So yeah, and also just quickly, if I could speak on this because we've had a lot of questions about it, the idea of passing out or anybody really being in any like physical danger from holding their breath voluntarily is like slim to none.
Mm.
If you're not plugging your nose, if you're not like actually self-asphyxiating, it is extremely difficult to actually cause any long-term or any relative damage from voluntarily holding your breath. And we also have some guardrails in the game as well. There are things mechanically that will limit the length of your turn regardless of how much lung capacity you have or don't have. So and all that stuff also just goes to feed atmosphere and flavor and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah. I imagine playing this game over time, you would probably build up a larger lung capacity. I would imagine, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we play tested the heck out of this thing. We can't play it on TTS because of it's a nearly dexterity kind of game because of all
Mm.
this sort of frenetic card management stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there is a case to be made. Practicing holding your breath can increase lung capacity, which is good for your health.
Yep.
And also, in a really weird situation where maybe you need to not breathe because you're underwater, like in some sort of weird trapped in a car situation, or if there's a fire and there's a smoke inhalation thing, possibly training to hold your breath could end up saving your life. So I don't know.
So there you go. The black mold game just saved your life. I love it. It's not too far of a stretch.
I think it is, but we've sort of had to like assure people in comments. We ran a marketing campaign ahead of time, so
Yeah.
we're getting a lot of comments from people that are, lack of a better term, just kind of hyperbolic, a little bit freaked out, saying like this is a game that's going to maybe get someone killed or is going to hurt somebody.
Sure.
And like we've looked into it, and that's not the case. It is really just about fun. But I think part of what we thought would maybe appeal to people in the board game hobby, especially under the auspices of it being a survival horror game, is that it maybe feels a little bit dangerous. I don't know. I think that that's kind of fun personally. That I don't know if I'm alone in that.
So let's talk about the campaign itself. I mean, you guys have been off to a really good start. You're only a couple days in. You've already hit. I'll put this in Canadian dollars because it's the only way I can see it.
Yep.
So you hit $23,500 so far. Well on the way to your goal, and you still got 3 weeks to go, which is just awesome. Can you walk us through kind of the basics of how to play this game, or kind of the essence of how to play this game?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to choose a prisoner that you're going to play as. Each one has 16 core spaces that sort of encircle the character art on a big jumbo card. Um, these are called your vitality spaces. And on them is either going to be blank, which it just tracks your basic health, or there's going to be one of three symbols. There is wit, fit, and grit. These are going to determine your basic stats on how you defend and attack. If and when confusion cards are added to your decision deck. So anytime these are covered up by spore damage, you're going to take different penalties. So you start off at full health and you're going to degrade over time. And you're really going to be mitigating that vitality track as you play and traverse through the different dangers of the compound. So you're going to have a randomly generated escape deck, which is going to consist of 10 areas per floor, 1 floor per player. As you flip these cards over, there's going to be 2 numbers on them. There's the traverse check and the search check. To search, you're going to roll dice and accrue outcomes, sort of a Yahtzee style accrue system, where as you roll, you're trying to meet this number on the card. So if it's 3, you want 3 outcomes of grit. Once you get that, you can draw an item card. And you can use items to trade with other prisoners, you can carry them to give yourself a higher attack score, and you can also craft them into more helpful items like torches and shivs and shrouds. These are things that can give you high attack power. The torch is actually like a god mode item that's very difficult to make, but if you do it, you no longer have to hold your breath. You can move through 3 areas per turn. Thralls, which are bad guys that are AI run that generate at random, you can just basically knock them down with the torch. But in order to traverse through areas, expand the compound, and make your escape, what you're going to be doing is if the traverse check is like 4, you're going to flip over, you're going to reveal 4 cards from your decision deck, and on them are these various sort of, I got you on screen so I can actually show you. There's these different zigzagging like lines, like middles, tops, diagonals, and bottoms. And what you're going to do is you're going to be flipping them, rearranging them, deleting them, replacing them in order to make one continuous neural path. Once you do that, you'll reveal another card and keep going. And this neural path thing is, I think, really cool, especially when you cover up your wit symbols. You're going to add these dud confusion cards that are going to gunk up the gears, really confuse you and kind of frustrate you a little bit. And the co-op till it's not nature of the game, and a lot of the table talk and player interaction, I think, is really what shines about Black Mold, because you're going to be negotiating, you're going to sort of be working with other players up until a certain point. Now, if you really decide to be tight-knit and stick together, you can escape as a group and you can win as a group. However, different conditions, different things are going to make staying with the group and not being selfish kind of difficult. So there is a little bit of betrayal. There's some light hidden roll stuff going on, but the game is kind of, you're a spectator when it's not your turn, and when it is your turn, you're just trying to move as quickly as you can and just make good choices. So it can be kind of tense. Harrowing is a good term that I use for it. But yeah, it's, it's definitely like a horror survival sort of experience.
Does everybody have to get to the exit, or if one person gets to the exit, everybody wins? How's that?
Yeah, if you want to win, you need to escape. If you don't, if you die, so another thing that's really kind of fun is, like, we've had this happen a number of times in playtests where one player will sort of shun the other group because they see that they can make it out and they leave, or they excel beyond the rest of the group without actually leaving a compound. And what this does is that leaves another player behind in a situation where they take enough spore damage that they transform into a fungal thrall. So on the back of every character card, there's alternate artwork where they're now this mushroom zombie monster. And your win condition changes from escape to make sure the other players don't escape. So, and it's not really so much a win condition as it is just like your modus operandi as of the point, you're going to be enacting some spite since everybody else let you die. Yeah, the way the win conditions sort of shake out is, like, if everybody escapes, great. If everybody escapes and you have more currency, which is this item you can draw called nugs, it's sort of a pearlescent mineral growth that comes out of the mushrooms.
Yeah.
If you have the most of those, you win, and everybody else is kind of a lesser winner. They don't really win as much as you. But yeah, getting out of the compound is the win condition. That's at the top.
So someone will still, even if you all get out, then someone's still going to be the winner per se, because they've collected more of the nugs, I guess, than another person. And if
Yeah.
someone gets killed or gets turned into this thrall, then they can try to take everybody down with them, right? So why
Yep.
should they go down with the ship? They'll just take
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I love it. So it's co-op, and then you're right, till it's not, and then it's
Yep.
very much a versus, right?
hmm
How long is the gameplay?
It runs about 30 to 40 minutes per player. So
Okay.
at 4 players, more experienced players will kind of get through it. The idea is, though, is like, at least our mentality is, as long as people are sort of staying on top of starting and ending their turns efficiently, the 40 to 60 seconds is the average people can hold their breath. Maybe pack another 15 or 20 seconds on either side of your turn to do the other things that you can do, which is interact with other players, roll to heal, craft and equip and to ditch items. But the meat of your turn is going to be the inhale and exhale steps and everything that happens in between. And that runs about a minute. So, 4 minutes per round, plus a little bit of extra stuff. So maybe 6, it runs around that time.
Wow.
They can get a bit long if players are sitting in one spot and sort of like unpacking the situation they're in, which definitely happens.
And when I look at the art style, I think I've seen a couple pages do this, but not a lot, where everything's monochromatic.
Yep.
Right. So the even the Kickstarter page, the artwork, everything monochromatic. What was the thought process behind that, and what were the pros and cons that you guys considered when putting that together?
So pros is doing full color artwork is really time consuming. That wasn't really front of mind when I decided to do a monochromatic art style. I am really into like alternative metal, black metal, doom metal, dungeon synth music. These all have a very spooky monochromatic sort of aesthetic. And I wanted to sort of borrow a lot of that mood and impart it into black mold to give it really sort of a gothic kind of spooky feel. And have it sort of ring the same bell that visually that you would see on like a death metal album, with lots of like spiny tendril like sort of shapes, and very stark white against black. And for the pros and cons, sort of talking to people in the community, we've had some comments that like, there isn't enough color, so it doesn't really pop off the KS feed and stuff like that. But the whole game package is monochromatic. I'm not really sure like how I would have sort of like circumvented that in the Kickstarter feed versus what we're doing for final product. I did really sort of commit to it, and for better or for worse, that's what we got. And some people love it, some people don't. It's that's just how it is.
Well, it's very thematic, anyways, and it's
Thank
it's
you.
on point with the brand. So, no, I just found it interesting. It's it definitely comes across as very black moldy, if I could use a weird description. And then, is there like stretch goals you guys have coming up, or is there certain things that are going to be unlocked during this campaign, or kind of what's the plans?
Yeah, we have a couple things. Some of them are, I'm sure some of your listeners sort of understand how the industry works. A lot of times stretch goals are things that are sort of a cherry on the sundae kind of situation. Like, they're not going to be these super financially like, stretching sort of things. They're things that, we could option to do. It's going to make the game cost a little bit more. So we have spot UV finish on the box, which is cool. But totally not essential. There's a couple things that I would really love if we got to do. One of them is a envelope of 5 additional plot cards. So we have this mechanism in the game called the plot deck, where anytime you move into an area for the first time, you're going to reveal one of these plot cards. And it's either going to be a madness card that you can by and large just ignore and continue your turn. It'll be a thrall card, which will immediately end your turn and generate a thrall in the space, which happens in other parts of the game as well. And then you're going to get these plot cards, which are going to give you some story and flavor, some unique artwork, and then a series of choices or a resolving mechanic that's going to immediately take place. It also ends your turn. This sort of speaks to the guardrail part of the mechanics that I was talking about earlier, where like these are things that like it doesn't matter if you can hold your breath for 5 minutes straight.
Yeah.
This stuff will just end your turn. So what we want to do is we want to include a new plot card that says, when you draw this plot card, look for the hidden envelope and then draw a new plot card at random and resolve it. So we want to have a black envelope that we're going to have the manufacturer. We're going to give them 3 hiding places that they can choose to pack this envelope in before they shrink wrap the game and send it and put it on a boat. And players, the first time they uncover this card, which who knows how long they do it, this will be a light legacy feature where when they find it, they're going to have to actually go through the box and lift out the vacuform trays and kind of poke around and see if they can find it. And then when they find it, they'll draw one of these new cards at random, resolve it, add it to the plot deck permanently, and then close the envelope and hide it somewhere else.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we think it's a really cool feature, and it is one of those things that, like, if we just eke out funding, we might not be able to do it. But, you know, if we do a little bit over, it doesn't need to be a huge amount over, but if we do a little bit over, hopefully we'll be able to include stuff like that.
What's one of the biggest things that, like, you've been researching this, obviously, you said for 8 years, right? So what's the one thing, or one of the one things that you guys decided to consciously do in this campaign going in that you've felt has really helped you kind of get to where you're at so far?
I think with this one, you know, we have a very supportive community of people in the creator sphere, as well as just like our community of artists here in Baltimore. But generally speaking, you know, I think I really do invest myself a lot in the world and the visual package of what we do as a company. If you look at Token Terriers, if you look at anything that we put out, I really do try to flesh out the entire sort of world and provide you with something that feels very like real, like it lives in the space that it inhabits. And you know, I think that people who take a good look at the kind of products that we're putting out can see that. They can see that I really care about the way that the art is represented, the way that it's executed. And yeah, you know, to be honest with you, like the breath holding mechanic, I do think that, especially for people who are kind of dyed-in-the-wool hobbyists in the board game world, they're probably looking at that and they're probably going one or two ways. I can understand it can be kind of polarizing, but they're thinking like, that's absolutely insane, or wow, how cool is that? That's really, really cool. And either way, I'm kind of hoping that they come to look at the page just to see what the whole thing is about.
Well, personally, I think it's super cool. So that was one of the things, the first things I saw that I'm like, wow, that's really neat. So like, you guys have done a couple games, and this is kind of the first real big one. Clearly, you're not stopping now that this is kind of your full-time thing. So where do you go from here? Do you guys have another game you're already working on that's going to come quickly on the heels of this, or kind of what's the next steps?
Yeah. So I met this artist on Instagram named Brooke Pembrose, who's based out of Australia. And this guy is a absolutely awesome illustrator. And he was posting these pictures of these cards. And I messaged him, was like, what are your plans? Like, I love the art. I think this is awesome. And for us as a company, sort of part of our mission statement is we want to release games that are of the ilk of an artistic visionary. You know, I would love to work with a big name designer and put my art on their game and release it under our brand. But for the time being, what I really like about what we're doing is we have two sort of working illustrators who want to like get into the world of tabletop games. And on Volca, which is going to be our next release, I have done about 1.5 years, 2 years of development with Brooke. It's a lone quest and 2 to 5 player like card battler. It's really quick little filler game. It's got damage tokens and this really neat sort of like shelf system where things move in and out of back lines and different entry and exit effects sort of activate. That'll be our next project in the spring. And then after that, we are going to really stay centrally focused on building up the expanded universe of Token Terriers Battlegrounds. We have like 30 plus seasons of factions planned for the ongoing future. So kind of pivoting off of doing 2 games that have nothing to do with our first release, I really want us to like hone in and start like really drilling in all of our focus towards building the community and the interest in Token Terriers as an ongoing franchise.
Oh, it sounds super exciting. Well,
Thank
for people
you so
that
much.
want to follow this campaign, they can simply go to Kickstarter, type in Black Mold. You're going to find it easily. I'll also put a link in the show notes. Certainly people can just go there and click. It'll take them straight to the Kickstarter link. Either way, check out the page. There's a lot of cool stuff to look at on here. John, I want to wish you all the best on this campaign and this coming year.
Thank you.
You take
Thank
care.
you so much. Really appreciate you having me today.
No worries. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.